Good morning. And happy Independence Day. Happy Interdependence Day. Happy Sunday. Happy July. Whatever else you choose to be happy about. Happy that. And if you're not happy, that's perfectly okay too. Because it's about being present to wherever and whatever your experience is in the moment. The title of our talk today is The Homelessness of the Heart. I want to talk about a type or form of homelessness that's very different than that of not having a place to live or a roof over your head. It's an internal homelessness. It's a place of feeling like your heart has nowhere to go. Your heart has nothing it belongs to. We try to find home. We humans, we try to find home in people, places, and things outside of ourselves. Relationships, possessions, social roles, beliefs, creeds, whatever. But something outside of ourselves is the place we go to feel good, to feel home, to feel a sense of refuge, sense of belonging. The heart yearns for that sense of belonging. The spiritual journey is an inward journey. It's a journey of turning inward, metaphorically speaking. Doesn't mean we ignore the outer world. It means our attention is not focused on the outer world. It's focused on our inner world more. And the journey home, in a spiritual sense, means, in a way, breaking the ties inwardly, not necessarily outwardly, but inwardly breaking the ties from those conditioned places of home, those places where we put our identity, our sense of self, our sense of happiness, our sense of belonging. The process of awakening involves a psychological separation from the identification with what might generally be called the tribe. The tribe is that which I belong to. And in many cases, the tribe is what keeps me alive. I can't survive without the tribe, physically, at one time. That's not true now, necessarily. But the conditioning, the human conditioning to find that sense of belonging, that sense of safety, that sense of comfort, refuge in someone or something outside of ourselves, typically an organization, a family, a school, a religion, a movement, whatever it may be. Even a football team, believe it or not. This sense of belonging is very deep. I'd like to quote to you from John Sanford. John Sanford is, or was, an Episcopal priest and a Jungian analyst. And he uses a lot of terms that are very similar to those of the Dharma. And in fact, the Dharma we usually think of in terms of the Buddhist teaching, but the Dharma is the teaching of what's true, and that truth, that wisdom, the deep wisdom can be found in all religions, within the religions, not necessarily as the religions present themselves, but within each religion there's a mystical or a contemplative aspect to it that unites with the Dharma in all its various forms. Sanford uses a term called the disciple of the way. The term disciple is simply one who's learning, a student, one who's practicing. The root of the word disciple is discipline. Disciple is one who takes on a discipline. The word yogi, the root word is yoke. And the word yoke means being yoked to a practice or a discipline. So disciple and yogi mean essentially the same thing. And the term the way, interestingly enough, that's one of the terms often given to the practice of the Dharma, is the practice of the Great Way. And particularly in Zen traditions, they use that term, the Great Way. The way is also sometimes a description given to the Tao, the way of the Tao. So the Tao, the Dharma, it's a way of living our life. It's a way of practicing our life. So with that prelude, I'm going to quote Sanford. He says, being a disciple means following the call to the individual way, And inevitably, this means separating oneself from this collective psychology of the group. We must free ourselves from the tribal loyalties, which are among the strongest earthly loyalties that humans have, and ground one's life on the still higher loyalty demanded from those who would become disciples of the way. Separating ourselves from the group identification is a painful process, for as long as we remain submerged in the group, we find a certain security, safety. That's the end of the quote. And once again, I want to point out this does not necessarily mean a physical separation. I'm not talking about you need to divorce your spouse and leave your families and so forth. It means an internal separation. It means becoming an individual internally. It means finding who you are apart from the people in your life, apart from the clubs, the tribe, the organizations you belong to. Who am I? Who am I? It doesn't mean physical separation necessarily, so please don't go home and say, Robert told me that we should get a divorce. That's not what I'm saying, please. When I was a minister, I used to always cringe when I would hear people say, Reverend, I did just what you told me to do. I thought, oh my God, what did you hear? You know. So I want to be very clear on that. I'm not talking about a physical separation. But if a physical separation is taking place, for whatever reason, through death or divorce or moving away or something like that, that is an opportunity, can be an opportunity for also that psychological separation. And certainly does not mean neglecting those that are physical dependent on you. So again, always ethics is in the background. Everything we talk about is doing no harm to ourselves or to others. But we're talking about a psychological coming into our own. Much of the time we are identified not so much with our present family as much as we are with our family of origin. That identification is very deep. And that can affect all of our relationships, no matter what kind they are. If we're identified with the role that we took when we were a child, if we identified with the messages we got from our parents, our extended family, our siblings, we have to psychologically separate from that part of ourself that's still living in the past, living those old loyalties to the church, to the family, to whatever it was that we learned to trust. I want to point out also that this is something we can't will to happen. We can't make it happen, but we can be willing to allow it to happen. So it's a natural process of the psyche, of the growth of our awakening. We can stop the process by clinging, by grasping, and that's when suffering typically occurs. And I think much of the time, the trouble with relationships, and again, I'm not making a blanket statement saying this is always true, but much of the time, the trouble in relationships is that individuals don't have that psychological separation. They really don't know the difference deeply between themselves and their partner or their family. In other words, they're projecting who they are onto the spouse, the children, the parents, whatever it may be. So in order to really have a genuine, authentic relationship, a loving relationship, in order to be genuinely loving, we must be a whole individual unto ourselves. We must be psychologically separate. Otherwise, we're not loving the person that we're with. We're simply loving a mirror of our own self. And so often, that's where the struggles in relationships happen. We're shadowboxing with ourselves when we think it's all about our partner or about somebody else. We're conditioned to believe that if we're feeling pain and discomfort, there's something wrong, something's broken, it needs to be fixed. There's got to be a pill somewhere, got to be a doctor somewhere. There's got to be somebody to fix it, right? So one thing we talk about a lot in the Dharma practice is allowing things to be as they are. You know, physically, once again, if there's an emergency, certainly you take care of that. I'm talking about our inner life now. So allowing ourselves to feel what we feel is very crucial to the process of individuation, to the process of becoming a whole person. So when there is pain, the pain of not belonging, the pain of separation, the pain that comes from feeling that homeless heart, that place of not having a refuge, having nowhere to go. See if you can stay with that. Because it's a very powerful feeling. It can be a very sacred feeling if we hold it and honor it and not try to either fill it up with something else or to try to numb it or distract ourselves from it. If we stay with it, sooner or later we will begin to feel something emerging, something very deep, something very powerful. And that what's emerging really is that deeper reality of who you are. Not the conditioned you, not the ego you, but the true self, the Buddha self, the Christ nature, whatever you want to call it. What's real. As we let go of what's not real, we open the door, we make the space for what is real. By allowing our sense of feeling not belonging anywhere, we discover eventually that we belong everywhere. There's no place we don't belong. We belong right where we are. We belong to the universe. We belong to the world. We belong to whatever and whomever. But we belong not in a dependent sense, but as a whole being relating interdependently with other whole beings. To be whole, to be individualized, to be awake, does not mean that we're independent and don't need anybody. But it means that we live as a whole independent person in relationship interdependently with others. So as we grow, then we automatically facilitate the growth of the people in our lives. That's the beauty of it. When we're enmeshed, when our identities are entangled, when we're caught up in this sense of being lost in the family, the tribe, the whatever it is we're lost in, then there's no growth in that. The pain that comes from that is the pain of conflict. But when we make that separation and we're able to discover more deeply our true nature, the relationship then becomes one of support, educating, and loving one another. So relationships then become a way of enhancing and improving the quality of our life, rather than something we try to hold on to. So, to be spiritually homeless is to let go of our false homes. When we do this, we can find then true intimacy with all beings. In the Buddhist practice, as you know, we have the tradition of taking the three refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. A refuge is your home. It's where we go to belong, to be safe, to where we are truly at home. So when you say the refuges, it's sometimes interesting to say, I find my home in the Buddha nature. I find my home in the Dharma, the teachings of the way, the discipline, the practice of the way. I find my home in the Sangha, the connection of all beings that are on the way, that are committed to awakening. I take refuge It means I find my home here. In the traditional Buddhist culture, if a boy, girl, man, woman wants to become a nun or a monk and join a monastery, join a temple, they renounce everything. They change their name. They leave all of their possessions behind. They leave even their clothing behind, and they wear just a robe. Everyone wears the same robe. There's no ranking. There's no chevrons on the sleeves in the Sangha. Everybody looks the same. And even the shaving of the head is a sign of letting go of our gender identity. So when you see a monk, a nun, you're seeing a human being. Sometimes you're not sure whether it's a monk or a nun. And that's the way it should be, because it doesn't matter. You see, they're a yogi, they're a practitioner. The renunciation. Now, we don't necessarily have to do that outwardly, but in a sense, we're doing that inwardly. We're doing inwardly what they're doing outwardly. I'd like to close with this quote from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. O nobly born, O nobly born. That's you, that's me. O you of glorious origins, remember your radiant true nature. Remember the essence of mind. Trust it. It is your home. Thank you for engaging in the practice. Thank you for listening.